We're getting
But it,
way off track here.
I think that escalated pretty quickly.
Are you tired of the personalities and experts on ESPN and Fox reporting on your sports teams? Do you wish there was a sports talk show that you could be part of or at least relate to? Well, you've come to the right place. Yo, YouTube, welcome back to another episode of our newest show here on the Comic John YouTube channel, Sports Society, where we break away from the comic book world to discuss the top stories of the sports world and give you our honest and sometimes passionate opinions. If you're new to the channel, please slice the like button, subscribe, submit your questions in the comments section to be read on next week's show, and most importantly, do not forget to tell your grandmother. And I, of course, am your host, your director of distraction, your coordinator of confusion, John Hassinger, and with me, as always, on Sports Society is my good friend, Kevin Smith Jr. Kev, thank you for joining me, as always, on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. We have a few topics, not a loaded potato of a schedule. However, the topics themselves, pretty heavy, pretty deep. We are coming off the NBA All-Star weekend last weekend, which was really a memoriam of Kobe Bryant. I mean, the timing was quite unique in that he has only passed away a few weeks ago, and now every single NBA anybody is all in the same town, in the same building. And you saw a lot of past stars, retired athletes, seeing each other for the first time, this gathering of this NBA family. Did you see any of the All-Star game weekend, Kev?
So we had that Young Guns game where it's like the players that are in their first 2 years. We had the skills contest, we had the dunk contest, and then we had the actual game. Is it worth having this event? Like, is it a good way to get your franchise player injured?
I always think that during All-Star games, especially when they have no meaning, and even baseball trying to assign meaning to it really isn't a fair rule. Like, it isn't
right.
It isn't a good rule. It's like a change, which is cool, but ultimately the guy that made the All-Star team from the Pirates really doesn't care if they win because he knows his team will not be in the World Series to get home field advantage. So it's really odd. It's a strange rule, but whatever. It's competition. It makes it more interesting. The NBA, I feel like they kind of have perfected the All-Star game because no one watches the Pro Bowl.
I think it's in the dead week. So if you're good enough to make it to the Super Bowl, you don't even get to compete in it. It's like you've had this phenomenal season. You're at the upper crust of our sport. Keep training and don't enjoy the time off. So that part kind of bothers me. And NBA is weird too because it's not even at the midpoint. I was trying to figure that out after your comments the other day. Is it a good way to get your guy injured? Is it a problematic situation? And every article I could find on the subject pointed out one thing. The average revenue to a city that hosts it is $100 million over the weekend. If the NBA comes to your city to host an All-Star weekend,
right,
the average revenue, like incoming to your city, is $100 million between the celebrity pull, the hotels, the restaurants, the bars, everything. And so that's a major stimulant to a local economy. And God only knows what the NBA profits off of that. I mean, we don't really have access to those numbers. You got to think that all these decisions, whether it's right or wrong for the health of the player, always come back to the monetary side.
Yes, and that is where my decision landed. One player is not bigger than the entire production that the NBA puts on during its season, and the All-Star game is included in that. It's just as included as like post-game press, like it's part of their contract. This is what it means to be an NBA player. Like I hate the argument, and this is why I brought it up. I hate the argument that you're worried your player could get injured. And it's like, well, it's not about you and your player right now. It's about the whole NBA and its giant worldwide global fan base. Seeing these numbers that you pointed out, I feel like Detroit should get like the next 3 All-Star game weekends.
Let's do our service to help the economy stimulate. We're just going to just move all All-Star festivities across all major sports to the worst economy in the U.S. that year. Like we've just solved so many problems for the world.
I know.
It's like, New Orleans just suffered another hurricane. All the All-Star games go there next year. It's such an easy remedy.
I could be wrong here, but this is what I thought I've heard confirmed. There's only 5 cities that the Super Bowl plays in, but I guess they've had to have changed that since they played in New Jersey and in Minneapolis.
I think you're right, and I don't know if 5 is the exact number, but I think it's also a ratio of accessibility, major airport accessibility and weather conditions, right? Like if you have a domed stadium, then obviously you could have a chance to host it, but there's got to be a million other factors as far as like backside bond negotiations between a city and the taxes to put in a new stadium, and if they do it, can they plea to the NFL to get the next Super Bowl? And like we could have a whole season on that.
It's so interesting, and it's so telling of Miami because the NFL had to tell them, upgrade your shit, you assholes. We know you don't really need the tourism from the Super Bowl, but we like going there. So
we would go.
Yeah, so upgrade your crap or we're not doing a Super Bowl there. And they did, and the new stadium's amazing. I think overall, the All-Star game is one of my favorite things of all the sport, no matter what sport it is. I love an All-Star game. All the best players playing at once. I think the dunk contest is, I just can't believe year after year how they come up with something that you haven't seen yet. I felt like maybe like 10, 15 years ago, I was like, well, I think we're done. Blake Griffin jumped over the car.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. The Kia.
One of those, it felt like, okay, we're done. Like, there's nothing, this won't be topped by anything. And they just keep doing it. The 3-point contest has easily become my favorite. I used to hate it. I used to think it was like the VH1 to the dunk contest MTV. I was like, God, this is for like the adults. And now I am one. So.
Well, we're there. So maybe that's the change in perspective. But also, I think basketball overall has seen a shift in the past decade or less where it's cool to be Steph Curry instead of the guy that dunks all the time. Haven't you seen that progression where the sharpshooter, the guy that can come off screens, the guy that can drain threes is equally revered amongst kids?
For all my wrestling fans out there, I'm going to make an analogy. It's as significant. Steph Curry to the NBA is as significant as Shawn Michaels to the WWF. When he became world champ, it was like, oh, like a high-flying little guy can be just as great, just like Steph Curry is this little kid. Like he gives short dudes hope that they can make it in the NBA, because forever you had to be big. Yeah, you don't have to be able to dunk. You can just drain threes. That's just an evolution of the sport and why it's global.
Did you watch the slam dunk contest?
Yes.
I thought Gordon won, or they could have let it just end in the finals when they tied. When they went to the next round, I don't know, and Gordon loses by a point, I just thought there was a little bit of controversy there. He did a couple dunks that I've not seen in a long time or not seen with that level of athleticism. He jumped over Taco, but the one where he comes off the side of the backboard and then comes around to, that was incredible. I thought he won that thing pretty handily.
Well, maybe that's something they're going to try to do since, like we said, like what new things can you do in this dunk contest to make it intriguing and to make it exciting? There's only so many ways to dunk a basketball through a hoop. But if you make the scoring a kind of scandalous little, then that's what they're going to do. I lied. I didn't watch the dunk contest. I watched the 3-point contest. You know what I'm doing? I'm mixing dunk contests and 3-point contests in my head. I'm like, wait, was that one this year, Buddy Hield, or was that last year?
Thank God for editing either way, so we're fine.
Keeping it all in.
This whole thing just goes.
No mistakes. So Buddy Hield, I love this guy. Is this his second year or is this his rookie year?
Oh, no. He's at least 2 years in, right? Okay. The kid out of Oklahoma?
Finally, something good out of Oklahoma.
Blake Griffin, too. Your boy that you brought up a minute ago. He was out of Oklahoma, too.
Oh yeah, that's when they were really good. Did they win?
They didn't win at all, but we actually went to a game at Oklahoma, and it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen to watch Blake Griffin up close. At that level. What is he, 18 or 19 at that point when he's a freshman at OU? I remember us sitting second row and him toying with people, like moving his eyes, and defenders would move and then he'd just go around them and dunk and we're just sitting there I don't want to lose, but we're in the presence of someone that's really going to be elite.
I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. I'm sure there are examples, but I can't think of anyone who looked like a pro when they were playing in college still as much as Blake Griffin did. He was huge. He was just bigger and faster and stronger than everyone. Gosh, that's such a great testament, though, to college basketball. It doesn't matter if you have one dominant, awesome player. You have to function as a unit, even though he's the type of player that can just dominant. Take it over a game.
Think about when Melo was at Syracuse, they did win it all.
Yes.
And that's the one dominant player.
But then I think what's his face? They had 2 players on that team. The other guy didn't go on to the pros, though.
Was he a shooter or a post player.
He was like a 3-point shooter. It may have been like his 4th year. McNamara maybe, or something.
Oh,
some
so he was like
name.
Paxton to Jordan.
Yes, but better. Like a college version of Paxton. He would be the best player on a lot of other teams. The All-Star game overall, though, I love it. I think the NBA basically has perfected it because they make it like a festival. It's like a weekend-long thing. It's not in the middle of the season. It's fine. It doesn't really matter when. I don't want it like right before the playoffs or whatever. It's in early to mid-February, so if anyone does get injured, they still have like 5 months to recover and make the playoffs.
Yeah. Good point. And it does seem to me like the one that brings out the most celebrities too. Oh, like this, it's just a who's who, a be seen type weekend, way more than Major League Baseball, way more than NHL, and maybe on the level of the Super Bowl.
That is such a good point. When did A-listers? It's almost like Jack Nicholson, a whole bunch of no one, and then rappers, and now A-listers are like, oh wait, yeah, Jack used to go to basketball games, so why don't we go to them?
Why don't I go?
Why don't we sit courtside and get our picture taken eating popcorn?
And most of the time, those guys don't have a college allegiance anyway, right? So like for them, it makes sense to just naturally flow into the pro levels.
It is like an Oscars-ish crowd kind of thing. Like
there you go.
Super famous people that go there, not just former players. I know the game was competitive. I didn't get to watch it. I think I was probably editing something for YouTube. I heard it got close and it was interesting at the end. What did they do with the 24-second? My parents tried to explain it to me. After like 3 different attempts, I just was like, you're not making sense. What did they do with the 24-second clock?
I don't fully understand it myself, so don't include that in the footage. But it did get competitive, and the fact that the quote-unquote stars, like the Greek Freak and LeBron and all those guys actually were competing and hustling at the end.
They may not be going 100%, but they're not going 50%. Like, they don't have a 50%. Like when those guys play basketball, it is such an ego thing no matter when they're playing. None of them are going to lose. I love how they do the draft so Simmons and Embiid can't be on the same team. I think that's so cool that we have that.
They have found a lot of ways to make it into a production more so than anything.
Oh,
and I give them credit for that. I think the NBA has really figured out celebrity status being a thing. And maybe it's partially because their best athletes are visible all the time.
Right.
Like they're not under a helmet or they're not under a mask or anything like that. So it's easy to market it in that way. Whatever it is, they've created this culture where it's so easy to market and it just keeps taking more and more levels of celebrity.
It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And yeah, you're right. Like they understand this is like I remember Shaq coming out with those Jabberwocky guys, those guys that were like entrances like wrestling, like they're taking a big page out of Vince McMahon's book for sure. Not to sidetrack before we get to our next topic. Did you check out any of this XFL, speaking of Vince McMahon?
I actually was going to suggest we use XFL as a topic next recording.
Okay.
Because I have watched it a little bit, and now that we have a couple of weeks of content against it,
yeah,
I would be really curious to talk about like the rule differences and whether we think it's going to succeed. I mean, it's interesting. There is some really unique shit in that league. And is the NFL going to adopt any of those rules? Like, are they going to use it as a test system?
Oh, I never thought of that as a petri dish. I think that the rules are awesome, like for the most part, from what I've heard, and I don't know them all. We'll save that for the next show. We'll get into that so we can do some research and actually have some facts, as I'm still trying to find out who was the second best player on Carmelo Anthony's 2003 Syracuse NCAA championship team. Yeah. The Astros, the Houston Astros, were caught stealing signs, which you can already do in baseball anyway. Everything is taken away from them, short of the World Series title, right? They didn't take that from them, did they?
I mean, no, not to this point. And who knows if I don't think there's another shoe to drop. I mean, I think what's done is done.
Right,
but certainly the damage has been done, right? I'm incredibly interested to hear your perspective on sign stealing. And then I think there's a lot of topics that are going to kind of unfold off of this?
All I saw for the most part with this Astros sign stealing thing. First of all, the news breaks, here and there, there's little whispers and you're like, oh, whatever, stop it. Like the Patriots basically did this, and what happened to them? They lost like a 5th round draft pick and like $500 fine or something, like that slap on the wrist. And then it's everywhere and it's a big deal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, what are they going to do? Okay, they're going to fire this guy and that guy, right? The same routine when a scandal breaks. But this story has not gone away for like 2 months. And I'm like, what is going on? Maybe I should read more than the headlines. So I actually watched not like a documentary on it, but like a news special that went in depth into what they did. And they used, now correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I gathered, they used cameras, but also like buzzers that you get like when you're at like BurgerFi and you just made an order to go and you have to wait and that thing buzzes. They would do that if it was like an off-speed pitch, if it wasn't a fastball, they'd get a buzz. Or they would also use a bat to hit a trash can in the dugout a specific amount of times, indicating, specific pitches. So super high tech, in depth, like James Bond, Batman stuff that's going on here. Like they're really using like advanced Stark tech to.
Except for banging on a trash can.
Except for banging on a trash can. But again, tomato, like you're doing something I can't call it cheat. If a guy's on second and a catcher shows curveball, the guy on second can go like this or this or this to the batter, indicating here comes a curveball.
Right.
So that's my problem. I'm like, are the Astros just ahead of the curve? Because they just created something now that's considered cheating that's never been done before. But it really has been done before, just in an archaic caveman style hand sign. Just because they use technology to gain an advantage, I don't know how that's illegal, because it's just a different form of stealing signs that has been going on since baseball started. If you get caught doing that, like say you're the base runner on second and you get caught doing that in a game, what happens?
How do they prove that you're caught doing that? I mean, signs and mannerisms in baseball are day one stuff, right? Tipping your cat, wiping your chest, walking your sleeve, like that's all just part of it every day, right? And that's where I'm really torn. I'll preface this by saying I really don't give two shits about the Astros, even though I live here. I don't want anyone to think I'm speaking from a position of like true loyalty or bias with this. I was happy to see them win. It does a lot of excitement for the city when a team is on a playoff race. I mean, that's really cool. Yeah, but as far as like diehard passion towards an organization, no, there's none of that. I agree with you. I think sign stealing has been part of what's made baseball for so long. And there's, the third base coach saying we're going to hit and run, and the opponent. Do you think the opposing dugout isn't watching the third base coach to see when a hit and run's coming?
Right.
Like that's still happening. But when you include it to the level of the buzzer system and the cameras and all these kind of things, is that where it's either too far, or is that where, as you're saying, they're just pioneering the next wave of sign stealing?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Where do you draw that line?
Tom Brady or the Patriots, whatever, they got caught spying, and then they got caught deflating a ball below the regulation. But now, what if they're just going to consider like, well, maybe some people have a preference of the amount of air that's in a ball.
PSI,
PSI, like whatever. Like maybe we can be flexible on that rule. Like the fact that they broke the rule to be better, but the rule's it's so gray. You're calling it cheating now because it's the first time it's ever happened. Caught.
Yeah.
Right.
So think about this as it relates to baseball too. And my personal belief is that hitting a baseball is the hardest single act in sports. I'm making a distinction that hitting a round ball that's moving from an elevated perch and moving,
right,
and coming at you with a round bat, that moment is the hardest single act in sports, right? Like go through hitting a golf ball, the golf ball's stationary, or catching a football. You've run those routes, you get to use both hands, where he's throwing it. It's coming in one spiral of form. All these other actions that are across sports, to me, are extremely impressive and extremely athletic, but that single act is the hardest. So even if I told you curveball, could you still rake it out of the yard?
Right. I was saying that this weekend. I was talking to my dad about this. Even if the Patriots knew every single play the Eagles were going to run, you still have to physically stop them. Just because you know it's coming, it doesn't mean they're going to plow over you and you're just not going to beat them. Even though it's a 90-mile-per-hour fastball coming, you could miss.
Sure, you could.
And the best miss 70% of the time.
Exactly. A Hall of Fame career is based on being good a third of your life. In what other professions is that okay? It meant high school kind of was for us. But if you were a trash man and you picked up 1/3 of the houses, how long would you have a job?
If I was a waiter and I got 1/3 of your order right.
I feel like that is what happened in your waiting career.
No way. I was awesome. Actually, I wasn't awesome. It was just turnover. It was like I wanted them to be upset so they didn't hang out. They just wanted to get out of there. So the next table.
Did you write the order down, or were you a memory guy?
I got it to a point. I got it memorized. I don't know how. It was weird because it was something I would never think I'd be able to do. The menu so well. You're like, there's only a certain amount of things that they could have possibly said, and then you start remembering all the changes that they made. I know, it's weird. Yeah, I was a good waiter. So this Astros thing is strange. They didn't strip them of the title. They didn't. They fired everyone, and then they just rehired Dusty Baker,
which is a death blow on its own.
Death blow.
I mean, the other interesting part is the backlash, right? From the other major leaguers who are coming out and saying, like, you ruined people's careers and this is so out of line and they cheated and they did this. It makes me wonder, are they being hypocritical? Like, do the other organizations cheat to some level and these guys are trying to come out defensive and say, oh, God, fuck the Astros. I can't believe they did all that. We would never do that. And meanwhile, they're in their locker room like, damn it, why didn't we use the camera in center field for this?
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a stupid move to like talk shit on them, kick them while they're down, because no one is clean. It's so obvious that anyone that is making a shitload of money or involved in a lot of money, there's just rules being broken. It's just inevitable. Yes. So I would not have said shit. I would have just kept my mouth shut. Yes, I would have thought, oh man, baseball's kind of being a little dickheadish about this because they just seem outsmarted, so they're like upset about it. I could be wrong.
Right. I agree with you.
They're weird sticklers about specific things, Pete Rose is a moron, and he just constantly doesn't say the right thing, but I don't judge him for that, and the Hall of Fame shouldn't. It's like you're allowing emotions to prevent the best hitter in the entire sport from being like, from what he did as a baseball player, just being unknown, to like educate kids like 100% every single play. It doesn't even matter if it's in the All-Star game. Like, you hustle your ass off and you will be successful.
The guy's name was Charlie Hustle.
Right.
That was his name. Do you think he's
Peter.
really?
They called him Charlie Hustle because he's a maniac.
But do you think the guy would ever throw a game? A guy with the name and the reputation of Charlie Hustle, do you think he would actually throw a game he was involved with? No, of course he wouldn't. But isn't baseball the family next door that looks like the perfect family and goes to church every week and then just kind of sweeps their problems under the rug, but really they have like a million skeletons in the closet and problems galore, and realize, like, once you figure it out, you realize your household isn't that bad? Like, that's Major League Baseball compared to other sports. They're like, if it looks good and it's America's pastime and it's clean and we uphold the rules and the integrity, then we're great. But God, no, we don't have room for Pete Rose, and we don't have room for this sign stealing technology, and we don't. And let me go one more on you. We don't have room for steroids. I'm sorry, like this may get greeted by a lot of people with, some angst. I have no issue with the guys that took steroids. I don't. No. It didn't make them.
They were all on steroids.
They were all on steroids. They probably all have to, just to get their bodies to recover from playing and traveling that much.
Right, yeah. That was what the main start of it was.
Sure. And could Barry Bonds hit a home run before he was supposedly on steroids? Of course he could.
Yes.
That guy was amazing.
He was hitting 40 home runs and stealing 40 bases in his early days.
So did it help him recover and elongate his career and do all these kind of things? Maybe so.
And swell his head. But Barry Bonds became bigger than baseball for like 4 or 5 years. Like, in my opinion, he was the most lethal baseball player to ever play baseball. Now, I don't give a shit about these Hall of Famers from the 60s and the 50s and even way before them. Give me a break. Barry Bonds would swallow them whole with chopsticks. He was walked 50% of his plate appearances for like 4 years in a row, because even when bases were loaded, they would walk in a run instead of just basically getting a grand slam served up to them. He was so singular. There was no one like him. And I think we forget because of the steroid shit, but there was a 4-year span where he was just a freak of nature amongst boys.
And if there's pitchers, I do too. Big Barry Bonds fan. Back in the Pirate days, amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But if pitchers are also on this alleged list of steroid users, what's the problem now? So if I have a pitcher on steroids throwing to a hitter on steroids, does the hitter get less credit for hitting that home run?
Right, yeah. Like, all it did was help them heal faster. And they're working out. So, like, yeah, they all got, like, bigger. But Roger Clemens, it wasn't like he was throwing faster. He was just able to throw fast longer. And that gave us that awesome run by the Yankees. Even though, everyone hates the Yankees, I was a fan of that team. It was like Jeter's first couple of seasons. They had that insane pitching staff. Joe Torre took over. I just fell for that Yankee team. And steroids gave us Roger Clemens' like second run and, got him a ring. It was awesome.
And we also had the amazing Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa year, right? Where they're just like trading blows, and you're literally watching a heavyweight bout game by game and going, which one of them's going to hit one today, right? So I had no issue with that, and I think it's part of baseball, but I also think it makes baseball very hypocritical to condemn certain things while they put the nice shiny guy into the Hall of Fame.
The McGwire Sosa thing was a phenomenon that for an entire summer you could be in a gas station, in a Wawa, in a whatever, and someone had the TV on with either the McGwire game or the Sosa game, and people would stand around and wait during their at-bats because they were hitting home runs like almost every other game. For a while, Griffey was in that race, but he got injured, of course. But closing, now let's seamlessly transition to Michael Vick. I watched the 30 for 30, Michael Vick, and I got to tell you, I don't know what it is recently. These 30 for 30s are becoming a thing of quantity and not quality, because nothing new was given to me. I mean, the Michael Vick story was well documented, and his whole backstory has been well documented. And maybe just because I'm a fan of his, I'm also a fan of Iverson's, and they went to the same high school. You heard a lot of stories about those two back in the day. The only new information that I heard that kind of like blew my mind was what they did to dogs if they would like lose a fight and be like injured. I mean, that is some dark crap. Like, they wouldn't just shoot them in the head, just give them a quick death. They would like electrocute them or like hang them. Like, how do you hang a dog? Like, do they have like nooses hanging like in medieval times? Like, or they would, and I didn't understand this, but they kept saying you would hang, electrocute, or slam the dogs. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Just like body slam them a million times until they're dead?
That's all I could make out of it. And I agree with you. I think that was the really disturbing turn in it. And it almost, well, take a step back. I also agree with you that the 30 for 30 thing has gotten diluted. And those used to be, you'd really look forward to a new release, and you'd leave the episode or the series or whatever it was and kind of sit there wide-eyed going, I did not know that shit, or I did not know the level of that, or I did not, whatever it is. And
it would translate the excitement that was in the air during the time of whatever top, remember they did the Bad Boys, they did Larry and Magic, they did the U.
You was the best.
It was like not until watching that you didn't understand just the excitement that was happening in the world at that time. And they did such a great job of doing that. but I feel like I don't know, they're sliding.
Yeah, they're definitely losing track on that a little bit. But this Vic episode didn't give me, a ton of new content really, which was disappointing. But it was concerning in addition to how they handled the dogs, like you said, but also that there were moments, didn't you feel like they were almost projecting it like Vic was a victim of circumstance? Like based on how he grew up, like this was just normal, or maybe not normal, but almost an accepted behavior, that certain cultures had done this or certain environments had done this. And it almost had this feel where a few of the lines in there, they made me stop and be like, no, it's never okay. You can't justify this to me.
Right. Like they were like, it was almost like, well, what else are you going to do to make money when you grow up? Because this is something that, people with what we have, our limited whatever resources, this is just the path we go down. And it's like, yeah, but do you just like all of a sudden not care about animal? Like, I don't know. I don't understand people that don't like get upset when animals are in pain or, because it kills me. And I could not have any connection with the animal at all. But if I see one hurt, I'm like, oh, I wish I was like a vet and I could like fix it right now, but I'm scared of that bird that's limping.
And I didn't spend 8 years in college to figure out what's actually wrong with it. But the lack of empathy there is pretty disturbing.
Yeah, right? That's really dark to me. However, I did not grow up with a lack of love, and I think that can really contribute to you having a lack of empathy. So it's almost like they never were shown how to like love a creature. So
or
they
anything.
Don't know how to, or anything at all, especially not a mangy, insane dog that just like tried to kill another dog and didn't make it, but is badly injured, and we're not going to take you to the vet. So after shooting it a couple times, maybe they just got bored and started electrocuting it and hanging it and, slamming it. I don't know.
And I guess if we don't understand the lack of empathy part of it, we struggle to figure out why those decisions were made when the animal was injured, right? Like, first of all, I don't think you and I would ever put a dog into a fight anyway, right? But the secondary phase of that is, if it was injured because of some instance, we would certainly try to take care of it. And if you have no emotion towards it and no feeling, and it's basically just like a chess piece for you to either make money or be entertained. Yeah. And it was that simple.
Right. It was like a thing. It was like you were selling vacuums. You have no emotion in that vacuum. And if it breaks, I'm just going to throw it out.
Yeah, but then I'm going to get bored of throwing it, so I'm going to find interesting ways to get it outside.
Yeah, I'm going to take a bat to it because I'm angry that it keeps breaking, piece of shit.
Right. That's like, the exact logic.
Yeah. So I hated that. However, I loved how, and this is something that I think I knew, but I didn't really know the extent. This is my favorite part of it, how Donovan McNabb, like, saved his fucking life, saved his career, talked to Andy Reid into taking such a chance. And for McNabb not to like, to put his ego aside, like, call it what you want. But this is how I interpreted McNabb going, I don't really care. And I'm not even thinking about him coming in and possibly taking my job. I just feel like, oh my gosh, he's available. We should get him and use him somehow. And before you know it, McNabb gets traded, Kevin Kolb gets injured, and Vic comes in those throwback Kelly Green jerseys and helmets, and he runs like crazy. He looks brand new, and the Eagles, oh my gosh, they're in the playoff hunt. We make it to the NFC Championship game, and we lose to Aaron Rodgers, who went on to win the Super Bowl that year. But still, it was amazing. And as an Eagles fan, when they made that announcement, I was like, oh, God, I have to root for Michael Vick now? It's like when you take in a bad person, but they're on your team. How can you root against them now?
No, they're one of you, and it seemed like he became a decent, upstanding citizen at that point, and you got to think McNabb gets most of that credit, right? I mean, from the little bit we know, we don't talk to these guys, but from the little bit we know, McNabb gets the example of like, this is how you lead a team, this is how you handle yourself, this is kind of how you go about it. Yeah, that's no easy feat.
Because I remember when they made the announcement, I was like, oh my God. Well, okay, I guess it'll just be him as like a second stringer, and that'll be fine. But I never even considered him becoming a starter, because if he doesn't win in 3 games, that city would boo him out of like they would be calling for his head if he was all of a sudden our starting quarterback. But it was McNabb's team back then, so that thought never entered my head.
So does this tell us that sports can transcend the societal woes? Is it all of a sudden that his excellence as an athlete made people forgive his transgressions?
Well,
was that his Hail Mary?
Yeah, I mean, that is such a strange thing, because everyone just loves a winner. And not only does everyone love a winner, they love a redemption arc.
Right.
They love seeing someone go all the way down and really suffer and then come back and be triumphant. I think Vic is doing the best that you can expect. Like he's talking to kids about not doing what he did, like he's doing things in the community. He's giving back. I mean, he served his jail time, and it's still horrible for what he did. But it goes back to Pete Rose. I don't really care about Michael Vick as a man. I just loved watching him play football. But because he killed dogs like a crazy person, it's hard not to talk about it.
Right. So are you able to separate it in your head where you can say,
sure,
this guy's winning games for us. I love the fact that he's doing that for the Eagles. But I don't want him living next door to us and my kids seeing, dogs chained up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like Tom Cruise is such a fucking weirdo, but he's awesome in movies, because I just separate it and I'm just like, he's playing a character. It's not who he is, but, he's delivering these lines really well. Yeah, for sure. I just watch what they do on the court and what they do in their personal life. I judge them in like a different space. Like Matt Damon. I think he's such a good actor, but if I met him in person, I would be like, what am I going to say? I can't even stand near you. You're so good looking. Like, it's just embarrassing. Like, I can't. I gotta walk away.
We were texting about it this week, is Keanu Reeves.
Oh.
And we're talking about, like, the guy just somehow crushes movie roles. I mean, like, even before the John Wick stuff, he has so many good movies. But when you hear him talk or see his personality or whatever, you're like, I'm pretty sure I don't want to just hang out and have a beer with you.
No, because you know why? I think I figured it out. I watched John Wick 3 last night. This is a teaser for first time watching John Wick 3. I think I figured out why everyone thinks Keanu Reeves is so awesome at acting, especially in this John Wick run. He says about 20 words. Like,
that's it.
Dude, I was like, wait a minute. There's not even there's no monologue or like long period of discussion. He's just like one sentence answers.
So really he just found the perfect script and the perfect producer and the perfect director, because it's like, they killed my dog. And we all go, oh my God, that was so heavy.
Yes.
No, he's really just still a dud. And he goes, they killed my dog. There was nothing to it. Like that. That was beautiful. So articulate.
Like one take, no matter what, that line is going to sell. They killed my dog. Everyone's like, no!
Now we'll go!
The underbelly world of that that movie is so good. And they're doing a spin-off of that hotel and everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
As a movie or a series?
I think a movie.
I would watch that.
I could be wrong. Yeah, I know. I can't wait for the 4th one. John Wick. That's not even his name.
No, sorry. I just got a text from our production assistant.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. No, it was really Ash. So do you ever notice that when like the NFL draft is going on and they have their phone on the table and they're acting like they're getting like such hot leads at that moment, like 10 seconds before it gets announced?
Yes.
Don't you really just think it's like their wife? And it's like, we need Greek yogurt and bananas on your way home. And he's like, you guys are not going to believe this.
No, it's really like season 4 of Grace and Frankie on Netflix is now available.
And he's like, damn it, turn notifications off.
What do I have my Netflix notifications on? God. Real quick in closing here, to circle back to baseball, the Dodgers, you suggest, may be the best lineup in the majors this season. And I feel like they've had the best lineup for the past couple seasons. And now with Mookie fucking Betts. Oh my gosh. How the hell does that happen? They're like an all-star team now. I mean, Mookie Betts, Max Muncy, Justin Turner, Cody Bellinger, Corey Seager, AJ Pollock, Fresh Prince, and Gavin Lux. And then they have Clayton Kershaw, David Price, Walker Buehler, Ross Stripling, Alex Wood, Julio Urias. They're nasty, man, but they have been nasty for a long time, and they've been to like, what isn't it like 3 straight World Series or 3 of the last 4, 2 of the last 3?
On paper, I mean, they just look unstoppable at this point, and that's why I thought it was worth mentioning that we're, as we're kind of hitting our stride in spring training, that lineup just looks insane. But in the past few years when I've watched them, the takeaway has always been they rely so heavily on these analytics, which is, it's part of sports now, right? These Moneyball and these statistical analysis. And we're gonna use this ratio anytime there's a left-handed pitcher that has, a gray hair on his left side of his head, we're gonna take a walk. And it's like, well, not necessarily. Like he may have dyed his gray hair that day and be able to strike you out. So I just think they've overdone the analytics and have the best roster possible, but need to just turn them loose too.
There's this intangible, immeasurable thing that like happens to a team that kind of goes beyond all the stats and all that bullshit when they make a playoff run. Like a perfect example is the 2004 Red Sox. Like they were down 3-0 against the Yankees, who were awesome, and won a couple of years later, and then just won 8 games in a row. Like that team just locked in and just plowed through. And a couple years later, they won again. This weird thing happens, and I don't think the Dodgers. It's almost like by continually adding in new names and having to like shift ego, preferability, within the clubhouse, that could be working against them. It's like, just stop and let this damn team gel without like adding in a new all-star.
And maybe they never galvanize because of the new faces all the time.
Right.
But the other part, and I think you'll understand this really well, don't you think some professional sports teams take on the nature of the city they're in?
Oh yeah.
Where
completely.
like that Red Sox team you just talked about is in Boston, and they've all got the pine tar in their helmets, and they've all got the beards, and they all, they unite, they go on that run, whatever. Is it possible that an LA-based team, I don't want to say doesn't have the same competitive fire, but just is a little more relaxed in nature?
Right. Yeah. There's just too many distractions, and I feel like when you bring in people from out of town, oh my gosh, they're in Los Angeles, the city of angels,
Yeah. There's plenty to do other than baseball.
Nobody leaves. Right. So priorities shift a little and distraction sets in for sure. I just feel like they need to sit on this team and stop. It sounds ridiculous to say, stop adding all-stars, stop signing all this talent.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't understand, because I was just looking at the history, and they lost to the Red Sox in 2018. They lost to the Astros in 2017. And I mean, so that's like the most recent, like 2 of the last 3 years. They were the NL champions and just couldn't get it done. And I'm pretty sure they lost to the Astros last year in the NL championship.
Well, and if you go back talking about all these things,
let me know in the comments if I was wrong.
Cities, teams galvanizing, all these dynamics. Look at the team, set aside the sign stealing bullshit. The team that the Astros won with was fresh off of Hurricane Harvey. The city needed a winner and was more behind them than they ever could be. And you had guys that had been on the team and grown up through the farm system, like Correa and Altuve, who had been through all the losing years, the shit years, I think Springer too. Springer was through the farm system.
Bregman
was through the farm system. All those guys grew up through the shit years, and then the city as a whole, devastated by the hurricane, galvanized, everyone's behind them. Like that time living here was this amazing magic where no one really looked at the devastation and, oh, we got to rebuild that and we got to rebuild that. It was like just Astros flags everywhere. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, yeah, dude.
It's
like when
I think
LeBron
it all ties together.
Like when LeBron and Bosch signed down here in 2010, it was Heat logos on trees, Heat logos in toilet seats. Like it took over. It really took over, and I loved it. It was impossible not to like be excited and like join in. So the Dodgers, we shall see. I have a feeling they're just not the team again. I love the Astros, and I loved watching them be like the dead last crap worst team in the league because I knew they had all these young boys from South America who are just fast as F and like batted 500 in the minors. So I just like couldn't wait to see. And it happened faster than I thought, like they rose back up like pretty quickly. And they also were more intelligent in their methods of sign stealing. Moving on to our final bonus topic, our weekly Judge report where we catch up on our longtime close personal friend, the New York Football Giants head coach, Joe Judge. And I watched his weekly show that he has with, I can't remember who has that video posted on YouTube that you sent me. I can't remember if it was like a magazine or if it was
the Giants themselves were producing that.
Okay, so that's done by the Giants themselves.
Their PR department, yeah.
Obviously by their unpaid interns. And he actually also had an interview with some local, CBS television news, sports anchors interviewed him. And I noticed one thing about Judge that's really funny. It must have been his time in Alabama, because when he switches on his professional tone, because for those of you who don't know Judge, he was nuts, like in a good way. Like Judge was a great guy to party with. He had a crazy sense of humor. Like he was so funny, but like almost in a way that hurts. And so when he clicks on the professional voice that he does, because he was, like I've said before, he was like a straight A student. And there were times in class where I'm like, how does he sound that way? Because when I hang out with him, he's like, the filthiest mouth in the room. He has like a Southern accent at times, and he grew up in Pennsylvania at times. Did you hear that?
I did hear that, and I laughed at that, and I attributed it to the years at Mississippi State and then the years at Alabama. I mean, those are both.
That's what I meant, Mississippi State.
Yeah, southeastern type, very strong.
That's the South.
That is deep South. Yeah. So the other takeaway I had, though, from that video is, yes, there's a twang, but he's incredibly articulate. Like he has the whole coach speak thing totally down. Totally down.
Dude,
like the buzzwords, everything about it.
He is Belichick and Saban's love child.
You might as well end this episode. I don't have anything else for you.
That's it for me. We'll see you next week. No, I think
Total Costanza. I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it for me. I think he is like a clone of, but I mean, he studied them, and that's how he is. Like I've said before, this guy is a really, really smart person, and he was obsessed with football. So he just absorbed everything. And it's not only did he like absorb probably, like play calling and game planning, but the public persona that gives nothing away. Like you show no cards, like no emotion.
Not a single bit.
And he has every question ready. Like every answer is loaded in like a gun system belt around his waist, ready to just be answered. Even when it's like there's specific questions that Saban and Belichick don't get into, especially predictions. There's specific questions where they'll be like, we're not. And Judge I was watching this other interview where they're like, when do you expect to start winning, Joe? Like, can we expect a Super Bowl next year? And he goes, Yeah, I don't get into predictions, but we have a great running back, a great quarterback. He just like cuts them down in like a breath and then just moves on.
Right,
so
right.
Good.
And don't you see the wheels turning where like the gun of answers you're talking about, the revolver just slowly clicks in his brain and it's like another bullet gets loaded. Here comes a shot, and like the media is just like right. There's nothing else they can ask. There will be no follow-up question when I'm done answering this.
And I think they're so good at it, this Saban, Belichick, Judge style, where they know these rejection answers, so they're not really answers, but they're just rejections of the question. And they know that the reporter is going to be like dumbfounded. So then they just pile on a new topic basically for the reporter to kind of like go with, like, so, we've been looking at special teams. And they're like, oh, well, tell us about that.
Do you remember Dikembe Mutombo, when he'd like reject somebody? I feel like verbally that's what Judge does. Like he just stands there and wags the finger, but it's a verbal.
I love it. And apparently all the players are really impressed with Judge real early on. I'm excited for the here we go. Former Giants running back Tiki Barber had only good things to say about Judge, as per SB Nation. I'm excited for the steps they're taking. I don't know Joe Judge, but when you look at him and how he holds himself and how he carries himself and the things that he says, it gives you that belief that there is that focus on detail that Coach Coughlin obviously espoused, the details and toughness. And that is Judge in a nutshell. He's overly detailed. And he is tough, man. I will give it to him. He has played injured. I've watched him play injured. So that just carries over, if you're that tough to just play through injuries, even when you're a kid. If you're doing it when you're a kid in high school, college, it doesn't matter. That carries over mentally into the way that you carry yourself as a teacher.
And the expectations you're going to set for your team too. You're going to assume that they can play to that level as well. So I think we're pretty fortunate that he's in New York and it's such a media mecca that we're going to get so much footage to be able to try and keep this segment going each week as far as the Judge report.
Yeah, and like we said, since we did grow up with Judge, we think it's just so amazing that I knew he would be a head coach in the NFL. I did not think it would be a year after I said that. So we just want to follow him and cheer him on. I can't believe it, but I'm going to be rooting for the Giants this season. Let me see here. Oh, my final thought about the that TV show, whatever it's called, I can't remember, is I wonder how long they're going to be able to do it, or how long they're going to do it, and Judge finally says, I can't, I fucking hate this. Like, we have to stop. Like, I can't do, I'm trying to relay this information to my players, and I can't remember if I told you or if I told them already. How long does it take for Judge to like hate this? All this media attention.
Well, unfortunately, that's part of the job in New York. I don't see that going away.
And I think it's the job for the most part for everyone. Like, I think a lot of coaches sign a contract to do like a local TV show thing. Because the Eagles always had one. There was always different shows for like Andy Reid and Chip Kelly and the other fat guys that coached our teams. Next week, we are going to get into the XFL, as we mentioned earlier, the different rules, but is it the same game? And Kev, you have here the other sports, as in NASCAR, golf, etc., pros and cons. If we are going to do NASCAR, I would like to suggest bringing on our good friend Bob Coons, who is a NASCAR journal, and get his take on it, because I know little to nothing. However, with him, because he's kind of forced me to watch NASCAR sometimes, and I've picked pieces that I do enjoy and pieces that I know why it's such a weird separated sport. So, and I've been to Talladega twice, so it would be cool to have him on.
Oh, I think that'd be a great resource for us to get him on for a segment. And we can also hit on the accident, obviously, from the Daytona 500. So
So
we'll kind of wrap all that stuff up together next week.
Yeah, I'm on a group thread with Bob. Actually, I'm on a couple with Bob. And one night, I think it was like last Monday, there was like 83 missed texts, and I skimmed through it, and it was like NASCAR, big bad car wreck, and then like later on this week, I heard he's like alive and like walking, but I know nothing else. So I'm gonna go in fresh, and you guys can get into what you know about it.
Okay, sounds great to me, man.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. This has been a long one here, so we're going to wrap it up. We will see you next week where we will get into the XFL and the other sports and hopefully bring on Bob Coons as a guest. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. I got to go.
Oh, hey. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment and hit the notification bell. And if you're finding me for the first time, I do trailer reaction videos, hot take movie reviews, news briefs on anything Marvel, DC, Star Wars. You'll love it. Thanks.